Equality is when you give everyone the same access. But I do think that having a really ambitious North Star that allows you to recognise that if you can create some small changes that impact individual people's lives, that even feels enough.
You can't underestimate if it's a small change of that one person. That one person is also in a community of so many others. Their role and how they show up is simply influencing all of the people around them.
We are undoubtedly battling some vast and varied and emerging distinct challenges that are threatening movement toward that North Star.
There's so many micro moments that help to dismantle these systems that don't serve us. The way that we support women in their achievements and we're celebrating success, all these little micro moments that happen every day and these micro decisions that we make. And when we're stacking all of these moments and all of these interactions, like this is where we get to see change happen.
Podclass acknowledges the traditional and true custodians of the land we meet on here today, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We're grateful to be here.
So no one told you teaching was gonna be this way. Your lesson plans are jokes, your patience broke, you're feeling in disarray. It's like you're always stuck in report writing, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your school year. But I'll be here for you
When the students start to riot,
I'll be here for you.
even if your coffee's gone cold,
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Hello and welcome back to Podclass team. My name is Amanda and as always, I'm joined by my friends Will and Skye.
Good morning or afternoon.
And we have a very, very exciting guest in the studio with us today. Hi, Gina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Before we dive into our chat, we're just going to read a bit of an embarrassing bio that really sums up how incredible you are.
And to be honest, it's totally the opposite of embarrassing.
No,
It's a
It's only probably
bio
embarrassing
we should
for
be
you.
very
We're sitting
proud
here
of.
like, wow.
Absolutely stunning. Gina Martin is an award-winning gender equality activist, writer and changemaker who has reshaped conversations about consent, power and justice. Best known for leading a landmark campaign that resulted in new legislation strengthening protections for women and marginalised genders in the UK, Gina has shown how grassroots activism and lived experience can spark systematic change. As a passionate advocate for everyday activism, she works internationally with organisations including UN Women, using storytelling, policy engagement and youth-focused education to build a more equal future. Grounded, thoughtful and deeply committed to empowering others, Gina's mission is clear: to help create a world where dignity, safety and opportunity are shared by everyone and where young people know their voices can change laws, cultures and lives. That is fairly...
Can I put that on my website?
Of course.
Wow.
We'll send you through the copy. I feel like it's so inspiring and you know, there's a lot we want to unpack today, but it might just be a perfect place to start with your journey and how you landed your feet in this world as such an activist in this space.
And I mean, we met you very briefly at an event. We connected and we were like, oh my God, Gina's kind of our people. We have to connect. We have to have you on the podcast because we believe that our community that this podcast mostly reaches can really benefit from so many of the things that you're doing in your day-to-day work. And so, so first of all, thank you for the work that you do. But we would love to hear where it kind of all started and how you've, landed right here.
Oh my gosh. Well, firstly, thanks so much for having me because I felt the same when we met. I was like, I love them. And I'm so glad I'm here to talk all about the work that you guys do as well. How did I start? When we talk about young people and their kind of voices, you know, we often hear people be like, give young people a voice. And I'm like, they've got voices. Yeah. Just listen to the voice they already have. I was brought up in a family that was very that. So I've always been like, they're going to cut the trees down across the road, save the trees. And mum and dad would be like, get out there. And then I was in the paper or I wanted to save tigers or I wanted to, I was just that kind of kid. So I was always very passionate. I was always questioning things.
Our kind of people.
Yeah. Always very passionate, always questioning things, always had big ideas. And I had a lot of adults around me, a lot of people around me who just really encouraged it. And I was very loud, and I was very energetic, and I was never told to be smaller. And I was, I was really I'm incredibly privileged to grow up like that. So there was always probably like a little activist-y energy there. And then when I got older, When I look back after my degree, I did a degree in advertising. And I went into advertising in London at Adland, and I worked as an art director. So I was doing all big ads and stuff. And when I look back at that kind of period, like first job and stuff, I was always kind of grasping towards things that had purpose. So like I really wanted to work on the charity briefs, or I joined this collective called 7 After 6, which don't say that in a classroom because 6, 7. But I worked 7 After 6. And we all worked together out of hours and did kind of, creative ad strategy for people who had no money but were doing really important charity campaigns, and then we'd shoot them and it was all free. So there was always like a wanting to move towards things that mattered.
A bigger purpose.
Yeah.
100%.
Just helping people. Like how do you become like part of a cog in a machine of something that's important that is, I guess, pushing against something that's unfair, or is asking a question, or is trying to change something. But then I guess technically when I first became categorically an activist would be in 2017. I was like 25 and I was at a festival and I was assaulted at the festival. I was upskirted at the festival, and a group of men took photos up my skirt and then shared the photos around to everyone in the crowd around me. And I saw them doing it and looking at their phones, and I, probably because I grew up in a family who valued my voice, told me to stand up for myself, and, encouraged me not to question myself too much, I kind of sort of faced up to them and was like, what are you doing? And got into kind of a scrap with this guy and asked a few people in the crowd to help me, and we stole the phone, and then I ran away and he chased me, and I got to the police and I handed the phone in, I handed the picture in, and I handed the guy in, and like did all the things that we asked him to
right
do.
things.
Right, exactly. And was told by the police that there was nothing they could do about it. And I was actually told by the police, I remember there's 2 police officers, and the male police officer actually said to me, well, if you'd chosen not to wear knickers, we might be able to do something because it would be a graphic image, but you did choose to wear knickers, there's not much we can do.
Oh my God.
And I remember being like, I've been
This
told my
isn't
entire
right.
life to wear more clothes. And now that I've just been assaulted, you're telling me that if I wore more clothes, I'd be able to do, like, it's because it's not about me, is it? It's, the rules always
My
change.
blood is like boiling.
Yeah, truly. So and that wasn't my first experience of male violence, and it wasn't my first experience of sexual harassment or assault, and it was actually my 3rd police case I'd had because of male violence. So when that happened, I just remember being like, what you've just said, just being like, oh, I will not. Like, I actually can't continue to go like, I guess you're right. Like, oh, I guess that's the way things go. And I decided to try and look into the law and find out if upskirting was a sexual offence. And I found out it wasn't in England and Wales, but it had been in Scotland for 10 years. And I didn't have any kind of legal or political experience, but I had friends who were like law students. So I went to them.
Can I just ask, is it in Australia right now? Or is that a complicated
It's state by state, I think.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. I haven't actually, I really should know that since I've moved. I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think the legislation is the same as England and Wales in the way that it's written, but I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Okay. But at the time, it was not an offence in England where you were?
Not a sexual offence, no.
Okay.
So there were certain laws that could cover it, like common laws. So they would be things like outraging public decency, which is a law that says if you do something crass and other people have to witness it. So say a guy's weeing at a festival.
Yeah.
He might get charged with outraging public decency. But obviously that doesn't recognise that there's a victim.
No.
And it doesn't recognise the specifics of what's happened.
Or the intent behind what's happening too.
Yeah,
exactly. So I remember just being like, oh, I have to try and fight this and I don't know how to do that, but I'm just going to figure it out. And I think at that point was when people started calling me an activist. And I don't think I recognized that I was an activist because I was just working in advertising at the time.
How did you feel when you first kind of received that label that people were giving you? How did that make you feel?
It's a great question. I think I was like, okay. Even now I'm like, okay. I call myself it, I think, because it helps people understand what I do. But I think there's a lot of expectation around who's an activist and who isn't, or like, and actually most activists wouldn't call themselves activists because actually if they do, they'd be in danger by the state. Like a lot of people that I know in different countries don't call themselves that because they can't, right? So I think I have a complicated relationship with it, but I just don't know how else to explain how I live my life. So it's easier that way.
That experience that you just shared, so thank you for sharing.
Of course.
It makes so much sense, understanding the depth of injustice you experienced, to how strongly you not only advocate today, but also stand up for empowerment for young people and providing education and awareness to those that work with young people to help create change in this very space.
And I think even more than that, right, it's because the systems that actually supported your perpetrators are the things that we're trying to dismantle, right?
Exactly.
So that it can't continue to happen in these spaces, and that our young people are hopefully growing up in a society where it's not just systems that serve one gender or whatever it might be. And I guess that's the space now that you're really quite loud in and really proud to be a part of. And we're really grateful for the work you're doing.
I appreciate you saying that. And I appreciate you both naming accidentally both parts of my work. Like the systems change is so important. And then the cultural change is so important.
Yeah.
It's all of it, right? Like it feels like we have to attack it from every angle. Yeah.
So we're kind of here having a bit of a chat about equality, and we're going to go into a couple of realms with this discussion, and you are the best person we know to have this conversation with. Let's start by unpacking what does, for you, we're throwing around a lot of terms at the moment, and there's a lot of intention around movement in the space of equality, and we talk about equity, we talk about justice. What does equality in 2025 actually mean to you?
It's a great question. It looks like people having the ability to self-actualize and to be able to have access to social, political, economic freedom, regardless of their identity, regardless of who they are, regardless of where they live. It looks like everyone having the same access. And that's different to equity, right? Because equity is about giving people
the same
the
thing.
specifics or the extras of what they need because of their marginalization. I
To be
understand
able to
equity
reach
to be.
what-
Yes.
But equality is when you give everyone the same thing or everyone has the same access. Now, I don't think we'll see that in my lifetime. My heroes worked their bums off their entire lives and didn't get to see that. But I do think that having a really ambitious North Star like that allows you to recognize that if you can create some small changes that impact individual people's lives, that even feels enough. Like if you're in a school and you change the way something works in a school, or you change something that in your workplace, or you change just how someone feels or a choice they make that is more in line with that North Star of equality or that North Star of being able to self-actualize, that can change someone's experience in their life. Like that feels like enough. It's not about changing society and making sure that happens in my lifetime. It's about moving in a way that embodies that and how that can impact people. And that when it does, it can change people's experience and it can change their lives, even if it's something small. I think it's the small change is the big change, I think, in this work a lot of the
Because
time.
you can't underestimate when it's only like, if it's a small change of that one person, that one person is also in a community of so many others, right? Their role and how they show up is simply influencing all of the people around them in their circle, right?
Right. And
So
that system's changed.
And when you're in a classroom or when you're working with young people, how do you think that they are like today responding to either that definition of equality, or what does it look like from as a young people generation? How are we responding to equality?
That's a great question. When I think about all the young people that I work with, or that I have had the privilege and pleasure to work with, I don't think that the language that I would use as an activist is something I would ever use with young people. I don't think they would respond. I would never talk to young people about equality in the way that I might on a podcast.
Yeah.
Because I
wouldn't
wouldn't
respond to it.
No, and like
That's about
I do
meeting with
gender
young people where they're at.
Exactly. I do gender work, but I don't go in there and go, this is gender work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we write a list of stereotypes on the board of things that I say, what does society say a woman or girl should be? And they just like, it flows out of them. They're just like this and this and this. And I'm like, cool, what about in family?
Of course,
this,
because it's the social conditioning they've lived in up until this point of their experience. So it makes complete sense.
Exactly. And they know it all. But if I went in and went like, what are the ways that gender socializes us into femininity by the 5 agents of socialization? They'd be like, get the hell out of this. So yeah, I think they respond. I think they can feel the inequality. I think they're living in inequality.
Yes.
I think they can feel they're part of a system. They might not have all the language to explain it. They don't have to. And I actually think we have really good conversations without using any of that language, but I think they can feel it. I think it's impacting them every day. And I think the idea that it isn't, or that they don't understand it, I think is really condescending from adults.
Yes.
If you are looking to support the young people in your school or your community to develop their public speaking skills, Youth Engagement Project facilitates public speaking workshops for young people. We follow our 4C public speaking framework, where we explore courage, communication, clarity, and connection, the skills and tools aligned with all 4 of those C's that are essential for effective public speaking skills and communication in general. Give us a call or send us a message. When you talk about the North Star, like, I agree. And, wouldn't it be just bliss if we could experience it in our lifetime? But having a North Star is so crucial. And for that North Star that you have so beautifully described, I think we are undoubtedly battling some vast and varied and emerging distinct challenges that are threatening movement toward that North Star.
Yep.
And we actually met you at an event that was talking specifically about the manosphere, which I feel like I wouldn't mind unpacking some of before we get into how can we support equality in our learning spaces, I wouldn't mind unpacking some of the distinct things that are challenging movement toward that North Star currently.
Oh my God. How much time do we have? I think we're in a really deeply... Well, firstly, what I'd like to say is that often when we talk about these kinds of things, people see politics as separate to this conversation, and it's absolutely not. Like, small p politics defines every single thing in our lives and our experience in society. So like, I don't understand people who are like, yeah, but let's talk about the everyday because it's
Let's
not
not
political.
get political about it. Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it's just not realistic, right? Like, we are in a deeply disruptive time, both politically, economically, socially, and culturally. Like, we are really facing down. I mean, lots of people find it easy to understand this when they look at a different country that's similar to us, right? So like, a lot of people in the UK will say, look at America, or a lot of people in the UK will say, look at America. We are siblings, America, the UK, and Australia. Like, we came from the same background. We came from the British Empire. Like, we share a lot of history. Politically, we're in a really interesting and difficult moment, I think, where the kind of systems that for a long time and the structures that for a long time have been there and have been pretty like bedded in economically have shifted massively in the last sort of 5 to 6 decades. And we are seeing such a change generationally. It's like me being 34 and working with young people, and then my parents, it's like, I'm looking at a life and trying to self-actualize and build a life in which I probably can't buy a home. Economic insecurity is a huge part of it. I'm terrified about the future of our planet, about what that's going to look like in the day to day. And then I go in rooms with young people, and they've been through a pandemic. The way that they connect is completely different because of the way that they live online as well as offline. They are terrified about the future. They don't know what the economic prospects are because all the economic prospects that their parents had or that my generation had have already shifted again. So
the roadmap that existed for previous generations doesn't exist for them.
No. Yeah. And so with all that shifting, that economic, social, and cultural shifting, I think what happens is the blueprints for how we start to build equality, whether that's in community or institutions, we start to kind of live that into reality. We change policy, we change whether that's at the top level, so law, or that's policy, or that's how a school runs, or that's how you act in your friendship group.
Yeah.
It becomes way less clear because the game's changed and the game is changing so rapidly, economically, socially, and culturally. So I think we're in a really interesting moment where we're kind of trying to consistently understand how we get there and what that could look like. But that's why I wanted to come to work on the ground with people, because I felt like I was in the halls of power where they were constructing that uncertainty all the time on purpose. And I wanted to get into rooms and go, it's actually quite human and simple how we look for inequality. It's not about people in parliament. It's about how you think about yourself and how you think about the people around you and how you think about the community you live in. And if we can understand that and get really clear on that, I think trying to reach equality starts to become a bit clearer. When you think it's all about big P politics and structural stuff, it can feel really intimidating. When you think about it's how you live your life and how you construct your friendships and how you construct yours,
And
It also gives so much power and autonomy back to the individual.
Yeah, which
like
it
when we
should,
think,
yes.
which of course some of it and much of it sits, we cannot discard the structural level. However, if we give that all of the power, what can we do in the day to day? We're
right.
powerless against it, and we're not powerless against
No.
it. There is lots we can be doing in our day to day lives, in our learning spaces, right?
And I feel like there's so many micro moments that help to dismantle these systems that don't serve us, right? So it's in the way that we call out friends when they say something that's sexist in a group. It's in the way that we support women in their achievements and we're celebrating success or whatever it is. There's like all these little micro moments that happen every day and these micro decisions that we make when we're interacting and just navigating the world that actually stack, right? And when we're stacking all of these moments and all of these interactions, like this is where we get to see change happen
100%.
and the change that we want.
That's how cultural change exists.
Yeah.
Micro moments, yeah.
So I guess speaking of this exact thing and how cultural change exists, our listeners predominantly work with young people and facilitate learning spaces, whether that be classrooms or programs or conferences. And so our big question to you is, how can we be helping or supporting create that change in a way that is digestible, in a way that is future focused, in a way that is nurturing equality and challenging the way it's always been done without being judgmental, but from a curious lens and from a lens of empowerment as well? Like what can we be doing?
Oh my God.
So much.
So much. I think all of that, for me, I've always believed that all that starts with you and your outlook on the world and your outlook on your work and how that aligns with your values and how you connect with other people who do that, right? So I think when we think about how can we create change in learning spaces or in the place we work or in our immediate sphere of influence, it can feel a little bit intimidating because it feels like, oh, I have to do something now. There's something else on my job list that's like on top of all the work I do and I'm probably underpaid and I'm over. There's so much work and I've got to put all this effort into now also changing inequality, right? And my kind of question to that is always, there's people around you in your workplace who also care about the same things you care about. And if it becomes less about how do you start to create change in your school or your workplace and more about how do we as a group of teachers or as a group of facilitators or start to have conversations about the things we care about and ask questions about the way this place works. Or when you're running a workshop, Gina, like this is what we do in facilitation, like how do you approach this? Or I'm noticing that I'm questioning myself a lot when I'm taking a position on this, and can we get together and create a space where we just ask a bunch of questions about the way that we work, ask a bunch of questions about the way that the school that we work in works, ask a bunch of questions about, and just get really curious about that.
And moving out of a default state of just accepting.
Exactly. You have to start questioning and getting curious about why things are the way they were. I think you should always be about wherever you work and how you work.
Are there like, I guess like for teachers or parents or whoever listening, are there like internal flags, I suppose, that come up for us when we're maybe engaging in conversation or where we hear a student make a comment maybe that we know is like something that is potentially dangerous or comes from a sphere that we don't want to be encouraging in any way? Are there like, I guess, what are the flags or the things that we should be looking and listening for as to when we need to start getting curious and asking these questions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you listen to your body a lot of the time in those moments. Most of the people I've worked with who work with young people, let's give an example. So say if we're working with boys and men and we hear like a misogynistic comment or we hear language being used and we're like, oh, I think that's probably pretty disrespectful.
That's problematic,
You can usually tell in your body how you feel about that. There'll be a reaction. There'll be a clenching. There'll be an impatience you feel. There'll be a frustration you feel.
A pressure in the chest, a warmth rising, something.
Yeah, you'll feel yourself want to react. There'll be some kind of movement that happens. A dysregulation. I don't know, like I often hear myself sigh. I go like, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm annoyed. What are your like symptoms and signals that you're feeling that when you hear something that frustrates you or that you disagree with or that feels like it could be harmful or problematic? And then a lot of the work that we do as facilitators is about being able to regulate ourselves, which I know you guys have talked about a lot. But that's so important, because if you can't regulate yourself, you can't get curious about where that's coming from and why, and then you can't create space for a conversation.
No, because if we're just shutting it down, and I mean, in my experience, I spent 12 years teaching in a classroom, and I've certainly looked back on conversations I've had, mostly with like young boys, like that I'm teaching in classrooms. And there's so many conversations I wish I could go back on and have a second go at.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've shut it down in the moment, or I felt that rush of blood, and I'm like, you can't say that, or that's inappropriate, or like, watch yourself, or what has she done to deserve, you know, like jumping in, because I feel that urge to protect a lot of the time it comes from, and wanting to dismantle. But now reflecting back on that, I wish that I had an opportunity to get curious instead, because all I did was block any potential for a future conversation or a relationship with that young person where they feel a sense of trust to be able to open up and explain where it is that they've maybe formed that potentially dangerous ideology or whatever it might be around, you know, women or female classmates,
Which
or
I think
even
is
themselves.
where the seed of change
Well,
lives.
people can't grow without that. We
No.
only grow in relation to each other.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, we can't grow with that. We are social animals. We need to process by talking. We need to explore, have an exchange of ideas. And I think where maybe which is completely natural and normal, because often we hear things that make us feel really unsafe or make us feel really frustrated, and we think to stop it is safety. But actually, to create space to create contact or connect isn't to justify something. And there's a way to hold people accountable with compassion, but also create space for them to explore and grow within that. And I think that's a really hard skill. But all you can do is kind of practice that, right? You're not going to get it right every time, and a clunky version of it is better than no version.
I think, you know, we are wrapping shortly, but this is such a beautiful, and possibly the best advice that you could give, is that those moments that the seed of growth lives there, and also to call out the fact that it's not always like we cannot do it perfectly the first time, maybe even the second or the third or the fourth or the fifth, but it's to continue backing ourselves to move in with curiosity and to take deep breaths, notice what those signals are within our body, and know that that is a moment that we need to take some breaths and an opportunity for a seed of growth. And I feel like before we wrap, it would be really beautiful to end on a note of hope, because I'm sure amongst all of the challenge and amongst all of the work and amongst all of the moments where you're taking deep breaths and identifying those seeds of change, there must be moments of hope that you see, and would love to know from you, what are you seeing in our landscape that gives you hope and that gives you promise, and that makes you know that we are moving forward, as much as that can be challenged at times.
No one's been having these conversations as much as we are now. That hasn't happened before. Like, people haven't been sitting down having conversations about masculinities and what boys and men need to be, you know, better to themselves and not cause harm to other people, and be able to have these connected relationships. No one's been having conversations about inequality to the level that we are doing it now. In the mainstream, it's always happened in marginalized communities. It's always happened in people who have been like real pioneers. But I think we're getting more comfortable to start to talk about this and try and figure it out together in the mainstream. And I think that's really exciting, because it means there's a want for it. And that's, I think that's relatively new. And we're not going to get it right all the time, but I think that shows that we're noticing there's a need. We're noticing there's a need for change. And I think we're trying to figure that out together. So that makes me really hopeful.
I love that. And I think there can be a fear sometimes in the supporting adults that we don't have like the right language, or we don't have enough knowledge. So we feel there's like a disempowerment there, right? That we don't feel prepared enough to have the conversation or to open the space, because what if something comes up that I don't know how to respond to, or whatever it might be? I think acknowledging that we're all learning and going on this journey together. And we always talk about like the confidence equation. People think they gather knowledge, and suddenly they have all the confidence in the world to do that. And we're like, we're missing a really, really, we need knowledge, yes, but we also need to take action to be able to get that piece of confidence. And so I think the small step, even if we don't feel totally prepared, but yes, having some knowledge, but just taking action, and our confidence will build in this space to be able to support our young men, our young boys, our young gender diverse teens and women that are navigating this ever-changing space, because they need our support.
Yeah, for sure. And that action breeds hope, right? Yeah. So that's why that action's so important.
Ooh. That action breeds hope. So
it's a really nice place to
notice.
I'm mind blown sitting over here.
Notice your cues. Be awake and aware to the environment. Take the opportunities where seeds of change are possible, and take action, because action breeds hope. Gina Martin, you are phenomenal.
You are.
And deeply recommend that everyone looks up
I wish we
your-
had like 3 hours.
I know.
To just sit here and
Gina
talk,
has
because
3
the
books
best.
and there's lots that she shares in lots of spaces. So do look her up and connect with her. We've been Podclass and this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
for having
Gina.
me.
We will
Thanks,
see
team.
you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll be here for you, 'cause you're there for them too.
Thanks so much for tuning into Podclass. If you've enjoyed this episode, we would adore it if you could go on to Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave us a review. 5 stars would be lovely. We would love to get this podcast into as many ears as possible so we can help and support as many people as possible who help young people. And if you're not already doing so, please go along to Instagram and follow us at podclass.aus.